Thank you, President John. Fellow Rotarians and guests, our speaker today is Kathleen Pavelko. Kathleen is the CEO and President at WITF, and she has manned the helm there for 13 years. WITF is a public media center serving 2 million citizens in our region. WITF's media services are quite broad. Public television, 2 public radio stations, a regional magazine, 2 websites, a statewide public radio network, a for-profit subsidiary, and a production services division. Under her lead, WITF constructed a 72,000 square foot public media center that opened in April of '07. This $39 million capital project was funded from 3 sources. $20 million in campaign donations, Pennsylvania's largest ever state contribution to a public media organization of $7 million, and $19 million in tax-exempt bonds. Under Kathleen's leadership, WITF's total assets have quintupled. According to Big Bird's friend account, that's 5 times the increase. He's been in the news lately a little bit. Kathleen's service achievements include the Capital Region's only weekly primetime public affairs program, Smart Talk on WITF TV, a statewide public radio network, Pennsylvania Public Radio, Pennsylvania's heritage hub for history, tourism, and education called ExplorePAHistory.com, WITF 89.5's first daily news interview program, Radio Smart Talk, and a region-wide initiative with 3 healthcare partners launched last April, Facing Cancer Together. From '96 to '99, Kathleen was president of Prairie Public Broadcasting, which serves North Dakota, western Minnesota, eastern Montana, and Manitoba. During her leadership there, she restored the organization's finances and created North Dakota's first statewide public radio network. Kathleen has been an executive producer for West Virginia Public Broadcasting and a freelance journalist working abroad in Athens and London. In her 13 years at Penn State Public Broadcasting, Kathleen served as COO, as well as various production and management roles, and also taught at the College of Communications. Kathleen earned a bachelor's with distinction in ancient history and a master's in journalism from Penn State University, as well as certificates in advanced strategic management and nonprofit management from the University of California, Berkeley, and the Harvard Business School. As a gubernatorial appointee, Kathleen served from '03 to '11 on the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. She is a member of the Society of Professional Journalists and a former trustee of the Archaeological Institute of America. She currently serves on the boards of the Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Salvation Army, both in Harrisburg. Kathleen is married to Dr. Eugene Borza, Emeritus Professor of Ancient History at Penn State and former president of the Association of Ancient Historians. They make their home in New Cumberland. Kathleen will talk to us today about WITF's new project, Transforming Health. It is a multimedia project in collaboration with WellSpan Health to improve understanding of the dramatic changes in healthcare happening today. Now, she has many friends in our audience who came up and gave her several welcomes, but everyone, please join me in a welcome for Kathleen Pavelko.
Thank you so much, Anne, for that generous and indeed fulsome introduction. It is a delight to be back. I last spoke to this club in 2001, but especially to see so many friends, former, current, and future board members and supporters of WITF. I would be remiss not to mention the very early and important influence that your presidents made on the development of WITF, going back to the chairmanship of our board by Art Gladfelter, chairmanship of Tom Wolfe. We've got current board members serving, Chuck Long and also Ann Kinsley, Romana Lee. It's a distinguished lineup and some of the wisest and most important advice WITF has ever received has come from dedicated supporters from York. I come to the podium just with a little bit of trepidation because I follow in the footsteps of so many distinguished speakers. John Romano was a speaker recently, and as you can tell from Anne's introduction, he and I have a long shared Penn State connection, going back to when he was an assistant dean of liberal arts, and I was, I kid you not, the vice president of the Liberal Arts Student Council. Yes. That was way so many semesters ago. I think Penn State New York is very fortunate to have John back, even in an interim basis. I'm going to talk today about education and about WITF's role in that. We play, I think, a valuable role in education in our region, and it may or may not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think about WITF TV or radio or WITF.org or magazine, but it is, as a matter of fact, at the core of everything we do. Let me start with a fascinating piece of information about you, about the audiences for public media. NPR surveys its listeners every year and asks them questions about their interests and values. And one statement they ask listeners to respond to each year is, "I like to learn about things that may never be of any use to me." And let me tell you that NPR listeners are 23% more likely to say, "Yes, that's true about me," than the average American. Don't you just love that? That's learning for learning's sake. NPR listeners are also 48% more likely to be interested in learning about theories, 35% more likely to be interested in art, culture, and history, and 64% more interested in living in another country. Now, and you guys really are all over that, I know. Several of WITF staff, including Tom LaForgia, who's my staff member visiting today, have taken advantage of Rotarian generosity in getting them abroad. You know, public television viewers are similar to NPR listeners in their interests and their values, and surveys show they are particularly interested in securing a quality education for their children and grandchildren. In short, the people who use public television and radio are lifelong learners. They read, they take education courses, they follow the news closely, they vote. And in case you were wondering, WITF's audience reflects the political makeup of this region. According to a survey conducted for us by Terry Madonna, Opinion Research at F&M, 56% of WITF users describe themselves as Republicans, 30% describe themselves as Democrats, and 13% describe themselves as independent. That leaves the 1% who say they don't know, whoever they are. Just 24 months from now, WITF will begin a year-long celebration of our 50th anniversary. And we already have a board committee planning the celebrations, and I've hired a historian to organize our archive and to write a narrative history of the organization. So we've been thinking a lot about where we've come and what we've stood for, and how we will continue to serve this region in the next 50 years. Now, as some of you may remember, we signed on the air with WITF TV on November 22nd, 1964, broadcasting from a converted bowling alley in the basement of the community building in Hershey. I can see the smiles in the room, you guys remember this. We were founded by an energetic and determined effort by educators who wanted to use that new technology of television for education as well as for entertainment. They were public school superintendents, college presidents, school board members, along with community leaders of all kinds. And these educators did something even more remarkable than create a media institution. In one of the earliest demonstrations of regional thinking, they created an organization that serves citizens in 19 counties, Harrisburg and York, Lancaster and Lebanon, Reading and Chambersburg and Sunbury. Even today, there are a mere handful of organizations that serve such a broad-based region. A close-to-home example of escaping the fragmentation that holds us back as a state, in my view. WITF now operates from the first purpose-built building in our 48-year history. It's located at the Swatara exit of 283 in Dauphin County, just a mile north of the Harrisburg West Turnpike exit. It is a community and technology asset. We employ about 70 full-time and 15 regular part-time staff members. And as Ann mentioned, we In addition to public television and radio, we partner with the Patriot News on Central PA Magazine, operate a commercial radio network and an advertising agency, and provide satellite and distance education services to business and government. Now, back in 1964, we called ourselves educational television because what we did was broadcast formal educational programs directly to schools. That's because if you wanted to distribute moving images to homes and schools, the only available technology to do that was broadcasting. There was no cable, no satellite, no internet, no broadband, no DVDs, no iPods, not even VCRs. We were on the air for just a few hours each day, and what we broadcast during the day were 15 and 30-minute instructional programs for use in third grade English or high school math or sixth grade science, one after the other, live, to be watched on TVs and classrooms all over the region. The schools chose the programs they wanted to use, and we scheduled them in consultation with the schools. But from the start, of course, we also produced programs to engage the curiosity of adults and children. The very first program produced and broadcast by the new WITF TV was a multi-part documentary called Pennsylvania History and Government. Another of the early programs was called Teletown, a third grade language art program starring the charmingly named Wendy the Word Collector. I have seen this one, it's really charming. And I'll bet there are a few in this room who may remember Our World in Focus, a long-running news for middle schoolers program hosted by one Michael Greenwald. As time and technology changed, schools no longer needed us to broadcast curriculum programs in real time. With film strips and videotape, they could use those programs as they wished, when they wished. But our commitment to learning across the human lifespan continued, and indeed has expanded. Sesame Street launched in 1969, featuring Jim Henson's Muppets, animation, live shorts, humor, and celebrity appearances, including the now famous Big Bird. It was the first television program of its kind to base its content and production values on laboratory and formative research, and the first to include a curriculum stated in terms of measurable objectives. It is now broadcast in 120 countries and in 20 different international variations. These days, WITF broadcasts 9 hours of research-based, educationally enriching programs for children every day. Our commercial colleagues have an FCC requirement to broadcast 3 hours per week, and those commercials are limited to 12 minutes per hour. The benefits of watching truly educational programs indoors. According to the study G is for Growing, children who watched Sesame Street in preschool spend more time reading for fun in high school, and they obtain higher grades in English, math, and science as a result. In part because of Sesame Street and programs of for similar audiences, such as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, WITF is especially committed to early childhood education for children, for their parents, and for their families. Each August, we present Ready, Set, Go Kindergarten, which is an event to prepare children and their families for that vital first learning experience. We offer workshops for parents and fun and educational activities for children. Now, after several of these events that we've held annually, it's clear to me that the kids cannot wait to go to kindergarten and the parents are scared to death. We also train early childhood teachers, giving them the skills and the credentials they need to meet the more rigorous standards that the state now expects for its preschool educators. As children get older and go to school, WITF is again an important part of their educational experience. PBSkids.org is the nation's #1 destination for educational video for children. In fact, 40% of all video minutes consumed on kids' sites are at PBSkids.org. I find that somewhat reassuring. Videos produced by PBS and member stations are the most used videos in American classrooms, and 500,000 teachers use PBS content annually. We've tried to make our own important contribution to the teaching of Pennsylvania history with our website, explorepahistory.com, which is the only standards-based online resource for elementary and secondary school teachers. And so I invite you to explore pahistory.com and expand your own knowledge of the Commonwealth's history. Perhaps you heard this morning's Radio Smart Talk program, which featured an interview with the author of now 5 books on the Gettysburg Campaign during the Civil War. What was startling about this interview is that the author is 14 years old. And I was listening, and I thought, oh, this is going to be really interesting. Nice voice on that fellow. I thought he was 40. 14. This is a kid who's going someplace. WITF remains connected to schools in our region by supporting their required career development curriculum. More than 2,500 students visit the Public Media Center each year in organized tours to give them an appreciation for the careers that are available in media. And when they arrive, let me just say that most students think there are only 2 jobs in media, one in front of the camera and one in front of the microphone. But by the time they leave and have talked to our staff and have seen us at work, they understand that all careers in media depend upon writing skills and on teamwork. We made an impact also with the WITF Central Pennsylvania Spelling Bee, which is part of the National Scripps Spelling Bee. Every January we conduct a written test for about 130 students who have won their local school spelling bees. And then in February, the 30 finalists from the written tests participate in a oral spell down, which we then broadcast, and that includes 5th, 6th, and 7th graders. These are very smart and dedicated students, and our bee is one of the very few regional bees that are televised. And our winners that have gone on to the National Scripps Bee say they are much better prepared for the national competition as a result. Our lifelong contribution to learning continues for adults as well. Our long-running NOVA series is one of the most watched programs. It is the most watched science program on television and the most trusted source of science information on TV. 123 million people watch PBS stations every month. Anne alluded to what is now the largest adult and community education initiative in WITF's history. It's been underway since April of 2011. We've been partnering with 3 colleague not-for-profits, including WellSpan Health, to bring the region a multimedia exploration called Facing Cancer Together. In television and radio programs, in print and online, we've been explaining the latest in everything from cancer research to detection and treatment, from the coordination of care to the mitigation of pain and the role of hospice. Facing Cancer Together is groundbreaking in a number of ways. Scale and scope is one. We have produced more than 400 media pieces over those 19 months, reaching 60 million media impressions across all of the platforms. It's also a shared editorial enterprise. Because we so trusted the expertise and mission orientation of our partners at WellSpan, Lancaster General, and Pinnacle Health, we opened the content creation doors for the valuable participation of their physicians, researchers, and specialists, with WITF retaining final responsibility for the content produced. And the partnership goes on. On November 12th, we launched Transforming Health with the same partners. It will also be a multimedia effort, this time to explain the huge changes in healthcare that are and will be affecting all of our lives. It will be coverage of the healthcare revolution in real time, and we expect it to last a year and probably longer. You know, public radio joins public television in enriching lives with stimulating content. It may surprise you to know that NPR's audience, 34 million people per week, is larger than the total combined circulation of the top 58 newspapers in the United States, including the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, LA Times, and so on. Morning Edition is the most popular news program on radio, and the 3rd most popular radio program overall, commercial or public. Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity are number 1 and number 2, by the way. Public radio listeners are enthusiastic consumers of information. Our listeners spend more than 7 hours per week listening to WITF. Public radio listeners are heavy users of print media, especially newspapers. Television is their least favorite form of media. They tend to watch less than an hour of primetime television each week. But they are likely to be heavy users of the internet. More than half of the NPR audience say they use the internet heavily, spending 17 hours in a single week. The information interests of our audience was the major reason we changed the format of WITF-FM from news classical to all news and information earlier this year. And I've already heard from a few of you on both sides of the opinion scale on that particular change. Our listeners had already indicated by their listening which format they preferred. We had more than twice as many listeners for news and information as we had for classical music. And in October, in our first fundraising drive since the change, we exceeded our goal and increased the number of new donors by 15% compared to the year before. The size of the average gift increased as well. So, what does it all add up to? Every month, 1.2 million residents of Central PA use WITF for TV or radio, websites, educational services, or in-person events. That's 67% of all residents, and we count each person just once, whether they watch or listen to one program or many. We have enormous reach and impact, but we understand our mission in a renewed and updated way. We think of ourselves as an organization that uses media for lifelong education, not as a media organization or a television or radio station. But because we operate in a very changing media environment, we have to be ready to thrive in a world based more on interactivity and on-demand access to programs than on the old broadcast model, which was linear, non-interactive, and based on the program schedule that we established. With more information, though, comes new problems in organizing and make sense of it. So for each of us, we still need a way to evaluate information, to put it into a context that makes sense. That's the essence of lifelong learning, and that's the core of our role and our relevance, to serve educational needs and aspirations across the human lifespan, from early childhood through elder maturity, and to support all the roles we play in life, from student to adult to parent, but with special attention to our roles as citizens. As citizens, we need a guide through the torrent of information that threatens to drown us all. And WITF does take special pride in the trust that our viewers, listeners, and browsers have in the information we present. But what will differentiate public media from other sources? First, I think it's quality. For public television and radio, that's fact-based journalism and the serious exploration of history and current affairs and commitment to the education of children. The second differentiator is ease of access, making sure our content is available whenever and wherever our audiences are. And by the way, you can now watch long-form video on the internet on demand. Just go to WITF.org and click on Watch. And everything from American Experience and Frontline and Smart Talk to hundreds of other programs are right there with the click of a mouse. The third differentiator is our mission of public service and lifelong education, what I've been talking about today. And that's the distinctiveness that has been the hallmark from the start. I'd like to thank you for inviting me today. I'd like to thank all of you for your support of WITF over many decades. I've learned from long experience that there are often questions, including about our programs. I will warn you that if you like the programs, I will take full credit for them, and that if you don't like them, there's a program director back in the office who will take the blame. Thank you very much.